The majestic site of Mount Fuji is a well-known tourist attraction in Japan. It's also one of 111 active volcanoes in the country. For geophysicist Dr. Graziella Caprarelli, working in Japan was a rich cultural and scientific experience. Born in Italy, she moved to Japan on a postdoctoral fellowship in 1990.
Japan, as well as Italy, are very active volcanic zones because they are at the margin of tectonic plates. So there are high levels of seismicity and volcanic activity as well. So it is important to study the evolution of those margins, also in order to evaluate volcanic risk.
After spending almost 5 years in Japan, Dr. Caprarelli moved to Australia and was elected as the inaugural president of the Japan Society for the Promotion of Science Alumni Association in Australia to promote the benefits of collaborating with Japan to other researchers.
Australians are highly productive. They have a great record of high impact research in all of the areas of science. Japan is certainly a world power in scientific knowledge. It has great technology, great equipment, and so it's basically a great marriage.
And for more than 50 years, collaboration between the Australian Academy of Science and the Japan Society for the Promotion of Science has involved thousands of researchers and many Nobel laureates, including Professor Brian Schmidt, who first visited in 1999.
It was a really formative time for me and a great chance to help build collaborations that last to this day. Just had a big nature paper last year that was built on that trip in 1999, interestingly enough, and it came to fruition 23 years later.
Associate Professor James Sullivan has also been collaborating with scientists in Japan for more than 20 years. In 2001, he did a postdoctoral fellowship for 2 years, researching atomic and molecular physics at a synchrotron in Japan.
It's a big electron accelerator, and you use the light to look at the way electrons in atoms rearrange themselves and gain insight into the fundamental quantum mechanics that goes on that governs those interactions.
His research now focuses on understanding quantum physics and antimatter, which he hopes will lead to advancements in medical imaging technology. And Associate Professor Sullivan is returning to Japan in September 2022 to undertake a fellowship at Tokyo University of Science.
Collaboration's critical. You can't just look up a textbook to tell you what to do when you're working right at the cutting edge of science and technology. So being able to discuss those ideas with other experienced people, use their experience with yours to develop new ideas is absolutely the key to doing excellent research.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today in the final event of the series, Cutting Edge Solutions to Shared Challenges. I'm Robyn Owens, a Fellow of the Australian Academy of Science, and I will be your MC today. Before we begin, let us pause to acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional owners and elders, past and present, of the land in which the Academy's office is located, the Ngunnawal people, and to the traditional owners of all the lands on which the Academy operates and its fellows live and work. I extend this acknowledgement to all First Nation peoples around the world as custodians of knowledge critical to understanding our world and informing our decisions. The Australian Academy of Science and the Australian Department of Industry, Science and Resources have partnered to deliver this online series, which aims to increase scientific collaboration through research and innovation. Today, the final event in the series, we will hear from experts in Australia and Japan as they share case studies of cutting-edge health research and technology that address some of society's toughest challenges. At the end of the discussion, there will also be time for an audience question and answer. You can scan the QR code on the screen to submit your questions at any time during today's proceedings. Please join me in warmly welcoming today's panellists. Professor Jane Frost, Associate Dean, Work Integrated Learning in Health at the University of Canberra in Australia. Professor Masahiko Hara, Visiting Professor from the Centre for Community-Based Healthcare Research and Education at Shimane University and CEO of mediVR, Japan. Professor John Mattick, Sharp Professor of RNA Biology at the University of New South Wales, Australia. And Professor Noriko Saitoh, Chief Scientist from the Cancer Institute at the Japanese Foundation for Cancer Research in Japan. Before we hear from our experts, we have two messages of welcome. First, a word from the Chargé d'Affaires of the Australian Embassy in Japan, Peter Roberts. Welcome, Peter.
Good afternoon, everyone. Minasan konnichiwa. Welcome to today's Health Research and Technologies online event, part two of a two-part series on cutting-edge solutions to shared challenges. You are meeting at a high point in Australia-Japan relations. We know we work together well, and there is great will from both sides to deliver more for each of our countries, but also for the region. Prime Minister Kishida's recent visit to Perth set an ambitious agenda for Australia-Japan cooperation in security, defence, resources and energy. And of course, this includes cutting-edge science and technology areas like space, robotics, AI, health sciences and technology. This event, organised by the Australian Academy of Science, with of course support from the Department of Industry, Science and Resources, provides a great platform to hear from the best about their latest research and to promote research collaboration between Australia and Japan. I want to remind you that Australia supports a range of competitive research projects, exchanges and fellowships programs. This includes those offered by the Australian Research Council, the National Health and Medical Research Council, and awards programs and others. The National Health and Medical Research Council has committed up to $3 million for the Australian component of successful projects in their 2022 eAsia Joint Research Program. Separately, all ARC funding schemes are open to international researchers, provided they apply through an eligible Australian institution. You will need to, of course, first find a suitable Australian collaborator. And programs such as the Cooperative Research Centre, run by the Department of Industry, Science and Resources, provide further opportunities for Australians to collaborate with international partners. Our great institutions, such as the Academy of Science, also provide opportunities for researchers and innovators who work internationally to collaborate with Australia. I hope you can use this event to forge new partnerships and support Australia-Japan making a real difference at home and across the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And now let's hear from Minister Akihiko Tsunami of the Japanese Embassy in Australia. Welcome, Minister Tsunami.
Good morning. Professor Chinupati Jagadish, Professor Frances Separovich, distinguished panelists and guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, on behalf of the Japanese government, allow me to congratulate the Australian Academy of Science and the Department of Industry on the convening of today's online event. I also understand that the Embassy of Australia in Japan has also been pivotal in securing the attendance of Japanese top experts in this event. Thank you very much. The holding of this event, Cutting-Edge Solutions to Shared Challenges, cannot be timelier. Last month, in Perth, there was a meeting between Prime Minister Kishida and Prime Minister Albanese and two koalas, as you might remember. Prime Minister Albanese was apparently more of an expert in culling these surprisingly large, heavy-looking creatures, and Prime Minister Kishida most probably made some improvement while in Perth. I have not been briefed on the exact comments made by either of the two fluffy creatures during the meeting, and I guess they could be classified. The two leaders, nevertheless, did manage to have some time to have a conversation on a range of topics in the absence of the koalas. While they discussed the importance of the time-tested partnership between the two countries, including what we often refer to as complementary economic relationship. And a lot has been reported on energy and security cooperation. One important takeaway from the Perth meeting is that the two leaders discussed future shared challenges and the way forward. The breadth of challenges mentioned by the leaders is quite extensive: health, climate, energy transition, space, critical and emerging technologies, cybersecurity, disaster management, supply chain resilience, and the list goes on. And do we need cutting-edge solutions to meet these challenges? The potential of Japan and Australia to work together on cutting-edge solutions, be it AI and robotics, or health, including in RNA vaccines, may have been somewhat underestimated or overlooked by many. However, when we look at the quality of research and development in both countries in these cutting-edge areas, together with the increasingly active partnership between our businesses and academic communities, as well as the actual achievements of bilateral cooperation to date, including very well-known examples in the area of space exploration, but definitely not limited to that. Cutting-edge solutions should be one of the defining features of Japan and Australia's collaboration in future. Let me conclude once again by expressing our gratitude to all of you and our conviction that today's event will be another important springboard for our two countries' partnership in science and technology, going from strength to strength. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that warm message. It certainly is a busy time in Australia-Japan relations. But now let's go to our first panellist. John, you've described genome sequencing as the one test to rule them all. Should every Australian have their genome sequenced at birth? And what would that mean for healthcare and disease prevention?
Well, thank you, Robyn. Let me say, first of all, what an honour it is to be participating in this webinar with esteemed Japanese and Australian colleagues. It's wonderful. In fact, I've enjoyed fantastic collaborations with Japanese researchers for the last 2 decades, and actually have an important paper in press with 3 colleagues at the moment. To answer your question, I think I preface it by saying, Robyn, that one of our great shared challenges, which will be addressed by science and technology, is the health of our population, and particularly an ageing population with the diseases that come on with advancing age. And I think that genomic information is going to provide the best and most comprehensive solution to this. So when I say it's the one test to rule them all, at the moment, most genetic testing is done for acute diagnosis because of some perceived problem. But in fact, for about the same cost, so currently about $200 US, we can actually sequence the entire genome of individuals, not only to track down the causes or to try to track down the causes of an acute problem, but also to harness all the rest of that information that may be relevant to their present or future health. And that can include things like the responses to different pharmaceutical agents, pharmacogenomics as it's called, cancer susceptibility, susceptibility to heart disease, other conditions that may be waiting in the wings that can be prevented or ameliorated by early warning. So the information in our genome is just extraordinary in its range and potential, and we've hardly scratched the surface. So apart from sequencing individuals who might have a history of cancer or heart disease in their family, or suffering an undiagnosed condition, the best way to introduce it progressively into the population is, yes, to replace the Guthrie test that's normally done, a limited genetic test at birth, with whole genome sequencing, and to put that information into a safe central repository monitored and managed by the government for the use of the healthcare system, and as we may discuss, the research environment as well.
So, John, there's still a lot we don't know about how genes relate to someone's risk of certain diseases. What kind of difference would this much data make to biomedical discovery?
I think, Robyn and colleagues, it will transform biomedical discovery. I think this will be the biggest step change in research that we've seen in our lifetimes. And by that, I mean that the integration of millions of genome sequences and millions of clinical records, matched clinical records, pharmaceutical data, and I think particularly data coming off smart sensor devices, will actually create a data ecology that will allow us to track down far more accurately the genetic variations that we all carry that give us risks, elevated risks for complex disorders. And the big ones, of course, are cancer, heart disease, and autoimmune diseases. And then later in life, the neurodegenerative disorders. So having this data ecology, which is now large enough for machine learning to look at, we will be able to make correlations that we could never make by reductive point-by-point research. Those correlations immediately can be fed back into diagnosis and early warning, but also take you straight into the biochemical pathways that may be involved in the first step on the route to therapies. So I think there's actually a revolution coming in biomedical research that utilizes genetic data along with environmental, clinical, and other data to drive discovery.
Thank you. So speaking of disease predictions, Noriko-san, can you tell us about your research on a particular type of RNA and its implications for breast cancer?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, first of all, I would also like to thank this opportunity. I'm chief of the Cancer Cancer Institute of Japan, and okay, so well, as Robyn introduced, I'm working on an RNA that's not translated in protein, non-coding RNAs. And I'm also working on breast cancer. So breast cancer is the most prevalent in women in worldwide. And 70% of breast cancer is called ER positive, which means that patients express estrogen receptor. And well, to treat this patient, we have some established method called endocrine therapy, which is fine. But the problem is that it comes back quite often. So recurrence is quite often. That's the problem. And especially the ER positive breast cancer have late recurrence, tend to have a late recurrence. So the patient, so unlike other cancers, like for the most of the cancers, like gastric or lung cancers, they can treat it by surgery and treatment. And then after 5 years of this treatment, if they don't have a recurrence, that's fine. But for the ER positive breast cancers, they have to worry about recurrence for like 10 or 20 years after surgery. So that's the problem. And now we are working on non-coding RNAs that's called LNRs, which stands for estrogen receptor locus enhancing and activating non-coding RNAs. So these LNRs express in certain population of ER positive cancers. And we found by patient tissue analysis that if the patient has LNR expression in primary tumors, they often have a late recurrence, which the recurrence after over 5 years of the surgery. So, which means that if you look at this non-coding RNAs by tissue in primary tumor, we can predict that this patient has a late recurrence or not. Other patient does not have a late recurrence. So it's kind of exciting moment now that probably we can predict the tendency of late recurrence just by looking at a single non-coding RNAs. Thank you.
Noriko, thank you. Cancer research is such a huge and varied field. What do you think the most exciting aspects of RNA research are regarding this, and what it might allow clinicians to achieve?
Yes, well, thank you. So, there are many non-coding RNAs in human bodies. Just Dr. John Mattick discovered a long time ago, maybe 10 or 20 years ago. So we have in the body, there are many non-coding RNAs, and also, it's now known that expression of non-coding RNAs are dysregulated very often in cancer. So the non-coding RNAs can be a very good therapeutic target. That's one exciting subject. But more probably important is that after this COVID treatment, now we know that the messenger RNA vaccination is very potent for effective for the diseases, and it's also known that messenger RNA vaccination is effective in cancer for a long time ago, for like in the past 10 years, and it was not approved until this COVID pandemic. But now we know, everybody in the world knows that messenger RNA vaccination is quite effective and quite safe. So probably we can go back to the messenger RNA vaccination for treating the cancer. Maybe that's very exciting for this cancer research field. Especially for the immune therapy for the cancer.
Thank you. John, regarding a population-wide genomic database, something that comes to mind for a lot of people are concerns over privacy and even the risk of people being limited in life because of their genome. How realistic is that? And can you tell us what you see as the biggest challenges?
Yeah, thanks, Robyn. I'd just like to follow Noriko-san's comments about the RNA, because one of the things I neglected to mention is that most of the areas of our genome that are associated with complex disorders are actually producing these long non-coding RNAs. So an entirely new field of discovery and understanding about human biology and disease, and very amenable to RNA therapies, as demonstrated by the vaccination success in COVID. People's concerns about this largely, I think, lack of familiarity with the benefits that this information can bring to them, and perhaps uncertainty about the levels of protection and privacy and who has access to that information. There are good solutions to the privacy and consent issues that have been well trialled in Genomics England and other places around the world, that I think once they're understood by people and conveyed clearly to them, including parents who might be asked to give permission to have their children's genome sequenced at birth, I think that most of those fears will be allayed, especially when people start to realize, both individually and collectively, what a transformation this can have for their personal health journey and for the cost of health delivery through the system, health economics, under increasingly a system that's under pressure. And I just finally say, Robyn, that in almost every condition, there's only one partial exception that I can think of, forewarned is forearmed. So instead of being condemned by genetic predeterminism, genetic early warning heads up is actually a terrific way to be able to modify lifestyle or to take therapies of one sort or other to delay or remove the risk altogether.
I'd also like to hear from Noriko-san about the acceptability of this kind of data collection in Japan.
Okay, so in Japan, there are two nationwide genomic database. So one is the Biobank Japan, and the other one is Tohoku Megabank. The Biobank Japan is composed of these patients from about 45 diseases. The Tohoku Megabank is consists of both of the disease and also the normal people. both have a huge amount of the data. And also Tohoku Megabank was established after this great earthquake in 2011 in Japan to restore to restore the Tohoku area in Japan. Anyhow, so both data banks has a huge amount of the data by now, and it's all public and accessible, quite easily accessible. And also, but we also consider about ethical issues, and also all the data are no the patient, sorry, the scientific, I'm sorry, sample person and also the informations are disconnected. So we cannot identify which sample is coming from which patient, not easily. And also there is a coordinator to disconnect and connect to this information. So in Japan, we also have this kind of domestic database and quite developing so much right now.
Thank you. And John, how has COVID-19 pandemic changed RNA research?
In two ways, I think, Robyn. First is that public, and by public I include our political leadership, awareness of the use and power of this technology is just extraordinary. Before, most people didn't even know what RNA was, except maybe some sort of link between DNA and protein. Now I think it's very much in the public mind about a new technology in medical science and translation. So I think that's made it much easier for RNA research to be appreciated and funded, and also resulted in much greater interest by governments and also by philanthropy in supporting RNA research. In fact, I had a meeting with the Department of Industry, Science and Research yesterday in Canberra on that very topic. So I think it is really accelerating the incipient programs underway in Japan and Australia into a new level of both awareness and funding. Of course, I should say that Japan has been at the leading edge of this for many years, starting with the RECON projects back in the early 2000s. So they've always been great RNA researchers. But I think in Australia here, there's very many fine researchers around the country, but there's new impetus that's come out of the whole COVID success story.
Thank you. So the pandemic certainly boosted some fields of research, but Jane, it also brought huge challenges to the health workforce and to educating future workers. Can you tell us how you're using virtual reality and other technologies to address some of these issues?
Of course, and thanks. It's great to be here. Of course, frontline health workers were really impacted by COVID-19, but so was the education of future workforce, particularly around the practical aspect of training. One of the things that I've been working with is virtual reality and mixed reality in order to be able to give students experiences that replicate in a simulated learning environment some of the experiences that they would have in a practical environment. It was very difficult during the pandemic to ensure that students were safe if they were on clinical placement or work integrated learning. And at some points we had to stop all of that practical experience. So some of the health professionals that are graduating now have had limited experience. Certainly in nursing, they have to have 800 hours of clinical practice. And that can't be replicated in any form of simulation, but it is good to be able to augment their learning in different ways and allow them to experience through a virtual reality or a mixed reality format. During the pandemic, I was able to actually stream holograms to my students who were at home, and they were able to view a holographic patient and start to work through what that patient was displaying, and that really proved engaging, but also was a new level to giving someone a case study on a piece of paper, to actually be able to view somebody who is experiencing symptoms, and then practically work through what they might be experiencing and problem solve that, was a really valuable experience for our students.
Jane, you're also using artificial intelligence to help overcome some students' challenges with communication, including those for whom English is not their first language. Can you please tell us about that?
Yes, of course. So I'm using an AI platform called SimConverse, and this allows students to engage in verbal communication with AI, and to have conversations and to repeat those conversations. One of the good things about this is that it removes any hierarchy. And if I was talking to a student and said, role play with me and I'll pretend to be a patient, there's already a power dynamic there. What this gives is the ability for students to go away and to do the practice in their own home and to practice again and again, but it also gives them the ability to have a transcript that they can bring with them and debrief with someone about their communication skills. The really good thing is that you can ask questions again and again to try and perfect the way that you're asking the question, so that you know, is it your pronunciation? Is it more about how you're asking and phrasing the question? And this gives a way of being able to practice that, which we're finding is particularly of benefit for people who have English as an additional language, who often think in their own language and then are translating constantly, and I have to say that's outstanding when people study in a different language, but we also need them to be able to, particularly in healthcare, to be able to communicate in English in our hospitals. So being able to get them to practice and to give feedback is really valuable.
Masahiko-san, your company also uses virtual reality, but for patient rehabilitation. There's amazing footage of a young boy with cerebral palsy who couldn't walk before the treatments. Can you tell us a bit about the medical conditions it's been used on and how it works?
Okay, thank you for the question. First of all, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to staff relating to this event, and I'm very happy to discuss this kind of technologies with you, all panelists and the audience. And the first question is about the medical conditions. So we apply our device to miscellaneous disorders. Simply saying, our device is a VR, virtual reality technology guided rehabilitation device. It's a medical device, and we succeeded in curing many permanent disability patients, including ataxic patients, such as patients after cerebellum stroke. And also, we treat patients with stroke, brain hemorrhage, and Parkinson's disease, especially very advanced and progressive Parkinson's disease. And you can see this patient is walking. He suffered from cerebral palsy for 11 years, but he couldn't even sit down. by himself. Of course, he could not walk. But using our medical device, he could now walk using low-strand scratches like that video in a sitting positional rehabilitation. It's very unbelievable for many people, because sitting positional rehabilitation make people can be able to walk. And this happens because based on my original Nobel rationale, that is, all diseases have the single mechanism. So our device can cure many kinds of patients because all diseases have the single mechanism. I mean, the traffic jam in your brain. So your brain receives the input and sometimes output the information to your physical activity. And all diseases have disabilities or dysfunctions in some parts of this brain information network. And our device is used to arrange or clean up the traffic jam in your brain. That's why we succeed in curing any kind of diseases. So our medical device, the indication of our medical device is miscellaneous and can cure all kinds of patients. And the question is the way to how it works, and the mechanism and the rationale is to clean up the traffic jam in your brain.
Amazing footage. Masahiko-san, how's your work different from the other companies using virtual reality for medical applications? And what are the limitations?
And thank you for this kind of question. I always be asked this kind of question, but it's very hard to make people understand the difference, because our rationale is completely novel. So for many people, or even for scientists or for doctors, the image or our device looks completely the same, and there is no differences. But our medical devices consisted of 15 patents, which try to make your brain estimate the point in a three-dimensional area. For example, in many VR contents, some objects come from far away to you in a transverse or from far away to here. But in our gaming, to make brain estimate the point, we fix the object, or only vertical movement is accepted in our gaming. So people have to imagine how you have to move your body more clearly. So we call it the point estimation. That's one of the difference between other VR contents and our medical device. There are many differences, 15 patents. There's not so many differences, but people could not find out the difference. Even specialists could not find out. But that's led to and resulted in the therapeutic differences.
Masahiko-san, as a cardiologist, you must be very aware of the health challenges that both Japan and Australia face due to their aging populations. Do you hope to expand the applications of this technology?
Of course, yes. So the final goal is to expand our device, such as for anti-aging medical devices. But first of all, to make this goal achieved, first, I have to make people believe the therapeutic impact, especially focusing on the permanent disability patients, because no one can differentiate our device from others. So we launched it 3 years ago. We launched our device 3 years ago, and the first 2 years, nobody can believe it. And always we receive criticisms that we are cheating them, cheating patients, because therapeutic effect is too much. And this year is the third year for us, and some, not all, but maybe 15 to 20% of doctors start to believe the therapeutic effect. So to expand our device all over the world, the first step is to make people believe the therapeutic impact. So maybe it will take 2 years, additional 2 years, and in the first 5 years after the launch, I think I have to focus on this kind of activities, try to make people believe their therapeutic effect. And final goal is, of course, to make all kind of people happy and healthy, both in Australia and Japan. So, of course, the final goal is expansion of our medical device to the world.
Excellent. Jane, some of your virtual reality training is also centred on conditions that increase in prevalence amongst older populations, such as stroke and dementia. How are you fostering empathy and patient-centred care in your teaching?
Well, one of the things that we've developed is a video of a patient who, an experience where people can experience what it might be like to have a stroke. This is filmed from the first person, so I think you can see the image at the moment. And you are in a bed, and you can immerse yourself in the potential that you have had a stroke. In this video, the patient actually has a condition called receptive aphasia, which means that when people are talking to you, you're not actually hearing what they're saying. And you hear something completely different. This is a very isolating condition, and it allows students to experience, just for a few moments, being in someone else's shoes, and to have that experience of how isolating it would be if you couldn't understand what people were saying to you. So that's what our video does, is it allows people to walk in other people's shoes for even just a few moments. This one's about 6 or 7 minutes long, and has really shown some promising effects in getting people to engage and to actually understand what it might be like if you had these conditions. It is really important that healthcare students understand what it's like from the other side, because we focus a lot on how we can help, but sometimes you can make things worse by assuming that somebody wants something, or acting for somebody without giving them a chance to do things for themselves. So this VR is immersive. It's a virtual reality experience, and it is filmed from the perspective that you are the patient.
Jane, can you also tell us about the value of using new tools to make sure healthcare students are having fun as they learn? Perhaps mentioning Marjorie, who I believe a delegation of nurses from Japan got to meet.
Yeah, so we have had some visiting delegations from Japan to come to the University of Canberra to look at some of the different ways that we educate. As you can see from the video, this is actually a TED Talk that I delivered in 2019, I believe. And this is a simulation technique called MaskEd. So this is me as an older adult, and the premise is that I understand what I want the students to learn, but I've also got some experience from my time as a clinician to be able to accurately portray in a safe environment an older adult. This simulation technique is called MaskEd, and it's very powerful because students need to engage with a character. So my character is Marjorie, and they need to engage with Marjorie, not me. And I will only ever respond as Marjorie when I'm in character. Marjorie has a full social history. She has a family. She has a full character that has been developed as a learning platform. I think that using different modalities allows students to learn in different ways. And when you can give people different experiences, it really engages students. They're not coming to see a PowerPoint every week. There's engaging experiential learning, and that can really create some powerful learning moments.
Thank you. Masahiko-san, the first foreign patient to use your technology was from Australia. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Are you hoping to expand your market or find new collaborations?
Yeah, of course, yes. So the first patient is from Australia. So that's why I feel like it's kind of a fatal encounter. And receiving this invitation to to do as a panelist in this event is maybe become a good opportunity for me to make an announcement to the Australian people about our medical device and the therapeutic impact. So I hope this discussion will lead to the increase of patients from Australia. And of course, I want to expand our medical device itself to the all over the world. And of course, Australia, as well as America and Europe or Asian area is also our target, because all kind of diseases is common, regardless of the races or region. So that's why I believe that we can cure people all over the world. That's why I'm trying to collaborate using this opportunity between Australia and Japan.
Yes, thank you. I'm sure we'll all agree that we're on planet Earth and human biology dominates us all. Noriko-san, you've been involved in multilateral activities to encourage women in the STEM workforce. Can you tell us about this, and are you looking to find new collaborations in Australia?
Okay, great. So this is a kind of different story. So I am a member of a group called WISJ, Women in Science Japan, which is which includes 8 females. It was established about 4 years ago, and because as you may know, the gender equalization is not very developed in Japan. We are always bottom of the ranking for the gender equalization. And so we kind of gathered together. And then we decided to make some events like every other once a year or once a year or 2 years. So we have 2 events, and one is about International Symposium for Chromatin Biology in female researchers in chromatin biology. So we invite 3 to 4 very established female researchers from Europe, America, and also Australia. And then also we invite 3 or 4 young female Japanese scientists. So we will make podium to them to present data together. So that way we can have a chance to interact with someone who are very established female researchers in the rest of the world. Also, we can make a chance for young Japanese female researchers to present their data and also interact to each other. So that's one event. The second event is the EMBO leadership course. So EMBO is the European Molecular Biology Organization, and that's the very big organization for the life science. And they are very, very supportive for us. And they offer the leadership course for us. So EMBO course normally takes about 1 week, and it costs about 2,000 €2,000. Very expensive. For us, it's almost impossible to take this course. But for our case, they offer the shortened EMBO course, leadership course, and it costs about €100, and it takes only 1 day, so it's very convenient for us. So we have this EMBO leadership course in Japan for just 1 day, and because in Japan, well, both male and female researchers are not well trained to be leader. We are very, very well trained to be a good researchers, but probably not to be a leader. So we kind of feel that we have to learn something. So we have these 2 events, and actually so this group is actually formed by Dr. Susan Gasser in Europe, who is very well established in chromatin biology. And she was very, very supportive for us. And she kind of drove our events, and we actually do this every year or once in 2 years. Okay, so this year, actually, 3 days ago, we have this international symposium for female researchers in chromatin biology, and we actually invited 4 researchers in the very established female researchers, and one is Australian researcher, the Dr. Mani Blewett from the WEHI, and well, unfortunately, she could not come in the last minute because she got sick, but we are very, very excited to have her as a speaker. So, well, the question is about collaboration with Australia. So this WISJ and EMBO activities are developing so fast and kind of established, getting established. But also, probably it's good to have the collaboration, more official collaboration with Australia. And also, we are kind of affiliated to the scientific organization called MBSJ, Molecular Biology Society in Japan. So maybe, we can start collaboration between Australian scientific organization with MBSJ and WISJ, and maybe we can, actually the president of the MBSJ annual meeting in 2024 is really expected to have this collaboration with MBSJ and some other scientific society in Australia, and promote this our science and also this female promotion in Japan. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Noriko-san, and thank you, panelists, for sharing your insights, expertise, and experiences so far today, and particularly focusing on, the importance of collaboration. So we have 10 minutes now for our audience question and answer session. If you have a question, please send it through on the chat line. But I'd like to start by asking our panellists in general if they can give some examples of joint Australia-Japan developments in your particular fields. And I'll start with John, please.
Yeah, thanks, Robyn. I think the most spectacular and satisfying and important and productive collaboration that I've and many of my colleagues here have had with Japan was our involvement with the RECON Phantom projects, which were initiated in the early 2000s to try to get the first handle on what we might call genome biology. In other words, after the human genome was sequenced, the question was, what does it produce and how is it modified, during development in disease? And while the ENCODE projects headed out of the United States and Europe got a bit more press later on, it was really the RECON projects pioneered in Yokohama on the Phantom, it was so-called Phantom functional annotation of the mammalian genome projects that were spectacularly influential and successful, and many Australian researchers were privileged to be part of those projects because RECON took the wonderful view that rather than just use Japanese researchers to analyse all of the data they were generating, they would invite people from all around the region and the world. And many Australian researchers had many happy experiences, both personally and professionally and publication-wise in our collaborations with RECON. That was really important, and it goes to how these collaborations work, because there was receptivity in Japan, engagement, but also an opportunity to be involved in projects. And one of the problems, I think, certainly in Australia, is that the granting agencies tend to only fund things in Australia, and it's very hard to get funding for joint projects, even though you might have an associate investigator from Canada or Tokyo or somewhere. So I think that's one thing that the Academy could look at, is to how to, without quarantining money for particular things, but how to make it easier for genuine joint projects with resources going to both parties could be developed. And I think Japan is a natural partner. And in fact, I should mention that prior to COVID, we had Japan-Australia conferences in RNA biology. One I remember held in Sydney. And we've just reinitiated through Archer Fox at UWA and others, the Australasian RNA Biology and Biotechnology Conference. And we call it Australasian because we now wish to engage, north with Singapore, Japan, Taiwan, etc., like-minded people in our region, because I think we have a lot in common in ways that we don't fully appreciate.
Yes, thank you, John. Certainly bringing more minds to a problem through collaboration clearly can help. I think another thing that comes from collaboration, though, also is complementarity, that each partner can bring different aspects. Yeah. Perhaps, Noriko-san, can you talk a little bit about that, how the projects benefit from the complementarity of the partners?
Yes. Yes. So, well, actually, I kind of became a member of the Phantom that John just told, and I really thought that I found that many Australian members in Phantom 6, and I was very excited about it, and also because this time we have. Well, after the COVID, we learned how we can get together by online, like right now, and we have almost no time difference. So that was very good for Japan and Australia to make a collaboration, and yeah, it was the very much benefit, and also in terms of RNA biology, there are many good scientists in Australia, and they're friendly. So we probably can develop more collaboration, intense collaboration, if we have some kind of official support to make up a symposium, or a joint symposium, or also exchange students and also exchange researchers and things like that. Yeah, if that happens, probably it makes more complementarity. That's it.
Thank you. Jane, part of the question about collaboration is whether it brings its own special challenges. Do you have any insights on what the challenges might be collaborating across countries and cultures?
Well, we certainly had some collaborations with specific universities. Unfortunately, the COVID pandemic affected those relationships, and it was hard then to get international delegations to come and visit. And so I think it's about reaching out to organisations and having those relationships between organisations and so universities that have a common goal or a common objective. So perhaps it is a specific course that they both have, that they can do some exchange and really both benefit from. So the benefits are huge. It's just about fostering those relationships, I think.
Okay. Unfortunately, it's now time to wrap up today's fascinating discussion. I'd like to thank our expert panellists for their engaging responses, insights, and contributions. It's been a wonderful discussion. As we've heard, there are many opportunities for Australian and Japanese researchers and entrepreneurs to collaborate to solve some of the most pressing societal issues with their cutting-edge health research and technology. So thank you everyone who tuned in today, and I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.